Hey there, fellow travelers. So this is the video for my radial arm saw teardown. This is going to be the edited version. The unedited one is up. I'm going to break this into chapters, and I'm also going to splice in the section I did on taking down the motor, which I didn't do for this one, but I've done it previously, so that'll be in there too. So hopefully this reference will be useful to somebody at some point in time. Hi, hello, welcome. It is my plan right now to get rid of this old girl because I've been having trouble with the motor. One of the problems with getting rid of this is getting it out of my basement and upstairs because these things are heavy and I'm old. So I'm thinking, well, I'm also going to get the do the recall for the motor, which means cutting the cord to the motor. And I had a thought, if I take this up in pieces, it'll be easier than trying to get it up in one single chunk. I can probably do it myself then. So I figured, why not film myself doing it? I'm going to do a long form video of this, just the shop hangout, and then I will probably also do an edited, quicker version of it. So let's see what we find, all right? This I've already shown on several other videos. There's a 3/4 inch nut back here, and this whole carriage assembly will drop right off. First things first, we're going to rotate the assembly around so you can see what's going on up here. We're going to pop this cover off with that screwdriver. Inside there you'll see there's a lock nut. We're going to take that off. That's a 3/4 inch ratchet on there. And there is also a washer in there. Now, something you want to be aware of, this is a nylon insert lock nut, which means that little piece of plastic in there binds into those threads and keeps the nut in place. And the more often you take this off and on, that's going to wear out and not work as well after a while. So you want to replace that, and I have actually purchased myself a nice new one. The engineer in me says that you probably should replace that nut every time you take it off. The mechanic in me says that's probably not necessary. And now this whole unit just slides right off that shaft. Easy as you please. Alright, in here you can see this threaded post. This is all part of the bevel lock assembly. That's in my other video. There's the bevel lock pin that goes in the detents on that. And we can swing this all the way around. And there's the front of the bevel lock assembly. There's a couple screws in back that'll pop this cover right off, and you can get into that. Alright, from the back side here you can see we've got these two screws. We're going to take these out. Alright, with those two screws out, this whole cover plate just pops right off. I'm going to bring you over here and you'll be able to see the internal component for the bevel lock system. And if you take this nut right here out, this plate will come off and this whole piece here will slide right free. And we can swing this around so you can see the back. That is that piece right there. That's the bevel lock adjustment pin. Alright, now we're going to take the yoke assembly off the motor housing. Just so you know, this is the detent plate for the bevel adjustment. And up here you can see the detent pin that goes into that detent plate. And of course, this is your bevel gauge. So around the back here, if you can see it all right, yeah, there we go. There's a 1/2 inch bolt right there. If you have a really shallow socket and maybe a swivel, you might be able to get this out with a socket, but really probably going to need a wrench for it. And then around the front of the yoke assembly, we've got two more, same size here. So the wrenches you need for this are a 1/2 inch wrench and a 3/4 inch socket. And a flathead screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver. And I believe, oh, you're probably also going to want some needle nose pliers. We'll get to that. As far as I can tell, all these 3 bolts are the same size, so there shouldn't be any problems with mixing them up. And the yoke just comes right off the top. If for whatever reason you want to remove the detent ring, there are Allen screws around the back here to take that off. Now we're going to take the housing off. We've got one screw right here. It takes this cover off. And underneath this cover, we've got the capacitor right here. Now, you do want to be careful with capacitors because they store electricity. They will give you a bit of a bite. So it's best to use insulated needle nose pliers to disconnect the capacitor. And then you can shunt these terminals with a screwdriver, and that will discharge any electricity that's in the capacitor, so it'll be safer to handle. All right, now at the bottom of the casing, you see we've got these 2 screws. We're going to take those off. Once again, these screws are driven into plastic, so you want to be careful when you go put them back on. They just need to be hand tightened. You don't want to impact wrench these things on. You'll shred the threads inside the plastic casing, and it'll be next to impossible to get those back on properly. Oops. And after you have those 2 screws off, this casing just pops right off. Just like that. Now we have the motor disassembled, probably as far as you're ever going to need it, but if you do need to take this framing off the motor, you can see there are bolt heads in the front right here, and there are nuts on the back side right here. You just take those 2 nuts off and that whole aluminum bracketing frame will come right off. Now in this part of the video, you can see me cleaning the motor down. I started with regular electrical cleaner because I was under the assumption that I would have to be cleaning some electrical contacts. But when that ran out, I switched over to the WD-40 dry lube, which I think is really good to use because dry lube is a Teflon spray. Teflon, just like it's in non-stick cooking pans, and it leaves a nice lubricating layer behind. So it'll help things move more freely, but also it's Teflon, so it's non-stick, which means hopefully the sawdust won't stick as much to it. All right, and now the reassembly. Basically goes just like you'd expect. Now when reconnecting the capacitor, it doesn't matter which of these you connect the positive and the negative to, but you do want to put them kitty corner from each other just so they're not likely to come in contact. And you can see inside this cover piece, there's a spot right there all set up for the capacitor and a little tail for it to go against. You can reinstall this with the yoke still in place, but I find that it's a lot easier to put that on first and then attach the yoke afterwards. And then of course we install the 3 bolts and reattach the yoke. Before you put the motor and yoke assembly back onto the housing, you want to pay attention. Sometimes this little gauge falls out. It just fits right in underneath here. And that is adjustable right and left so you can zero out your guide on it. Now, something to be mindful of when you're tightening down this screw, this controls the tension on the bevel movement. So you want to adjust it so it's tight enough but not too tight. Alright, let's explain a little bit about how an electric motor works and some of the things you can diagnose. An electric motor and an electric generator are essentially exactly the same thing. In the center you've got this rotating shaft with permanent magnets attached all over it, and around that you have wrapped these wire windings, copper wire, lots and lots of them. If you want to generate electricity, you spin this shaft, and the magnet passing by the wires creates an electrical current in the wires, and you get electricity coming out. But to make a motor, you put electricity into the wires, and that creates a magnetic field, and that pushes against the permanent magnets on the shaft and spins it. You know when you take two magnets and you go to hold them, the same poles together, and they keep pushing off each other? That's exactly what's going on inside of here. Now, one of the issues with a motor like this is it takes an awful lot of power just to get it turning in the first place. Once it's rolling, it's not too bad. That's what the capacitor is for. That stores a big charge of electricity that dumps into the motor and actually gets it spinning. But you don't want that to stay engaged while you're using the saw. So over here, we've got this little bit of a switch right here that cuts the capacitor out of the circuit. And on the stand thing here, you can see we've got these two little weights basically that will spin outwards. The centrifugal force of this spinning throws these outwards. And you can see right there, there's a plate that moves when those get flung outward. It's a little tricky to show. There we go. See the plate move right there? So as this spin, that plates move, and that disconnects the switch, which disconnects the capacitor. So if you have a motor that won't start, one of the things you want to check is the capacitor. You need a voltmeter or a multi-tool to do that, a multimeter.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
I don't have one that can check these, but you can buy them easily enough. You can also check this switch. If the switch has gone bad, then it might be keeping that circuit open and the capacitor's just not engaged. It's possible these fins could be stuck outward, keeping the switch open. And I don't know where it is on this motor, but there's also a thermal switch that you can look at. Other than that, there's not really much to go wrong inside of these things. This is, I was gonna say, I think this is just a shroud, but that feels like a solid piece of cast aluminum. There are Phillips screws on the back here. So let me pull those off. Huzzah! All right, we get a couple of bolts here and a couple up here, and this pretty obviously looks like it secures the cross arm to the central post. But let's try taking these off and see what happens then. That's smaller than 3/4, but maybe bigger than a half. 9/16 maybe. I can think in metric for some things, but I think much more easily in English for others. 9/16 is 14 mil, 1/2 inch is 13 mil. I know that from my automotive days. This could go very poorly if these brackets are actually what's holding that on there, and this whole arm is going to dump when I take these ones off. So let's see if that's what happens or not. Ah, no, that takes this trim piece off here. And this seems to serve, well, no, it does, it goes on there. This might be like a bearing surface. Yeah, I don't think these are what are actually holding that arm on. No, these are holding these brackets on. I genuinely think these brackets maybe serve as a bearing. Oh! Or that might be what was holding this on. Thank God the swing arm is only aluminum. If this thing was cast iron, I don't know if I could hold it. This right here is what I was seeing the threaded ends come through. Once this comes off, that whole piece is going to come off. And that looks like it's a fat Allen. So let's get us a fat Allen. Doesn't look like it serves any other purpose. It's not as far as I can tell. Yeah, there are 3 screws. It looks like they're, honestly, it looks like they're self-tapped into the steel. Like, I genuinely don't think that they drilled and tapped holes for these. Oh, maybe they did. Just looks kind of brutalist inside there, that's all. I mean, I don't know if you can see down in there. Yeah, there you go. See how they're just kind of pushing through the metal? Those aren't cleanly drilled holes. Those look like something that was self-tapped to me, although the ends of the screws don't look like self-tappers. Here we go. Taps right out of the way. And then this whole assembly this would probably be easier if I had left all of this connected and I could pull tension off of the adjuster. There it is. All right, so to recap, to get the arm off, you pop this off the miter gauge. There's 2 screws. The miter gauge comes off. There's 3 Allens that hold this onto here. That comes off, and then the whole arm just slops up right up off the top of the column. Tell you what, it's moments like this that I do miss my pneumatic tools of old. An air ratchet here would be primo. All right, this whole bottom section is coming off now. There we go. All right. There is our carriage and bearing track. And look at that. That just rolls right off the carriage there. And there's your upper guide bearings. Ugh, what a mess. Looks like we've got 2 bearings here. The roller bearings that ride on the track, and we've got 2 bearings on either side to give it stability, I'm sure. This is a detent pin right here for the bevel rotation. Is that the bevel? Whatever, for that rotation. The swivel, for the swivel. Yeah, right there. Can you see that? Is that on camera? Yeah. Right there is the swivel rotation lock pin. All right, that was a shocking waste of dry lube, but I like this. I can see what's going on here. We've got the bolts holding this together. As I mentioned, this pin right here is our swivel detent. You can see the pin moving in and out. We've got screws here holding these little accessory bits on, and there's bolts on the back of these bearings. So if you need to get the bearings off, you take those bolts off of there. And that's all there really is to this whole assembly here. You get a couple of screws to take that off. All right, this cover, 2 screws going up this way. That uncovers the switch assembly. All right, there's the switch assembly. Looks like with that cover off, looks like the switch just pops right out of there. Oh yeah. And we've just got a couple of paddle blade connectors there that'll use pliers to get those off. It'll get the job done. Get her done! Ta-da! So I'm pretty sure there were plastic covers here. I'm pretty sure these are what you take off to make that adjustment right there. Now I see a silver screw. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a silver bolt right there. I can't really see what's going on that side. Let me throw a little light in there. Oh, you know what? That might have a piece of spring steel there. It might be part of what that rotational mechanism is. The lock spring is right in there. Just being a little careful because I don't want my fingers to be in between pieces of metal if this thing decides to just let go and let God. That kind of understanding comes from long years and painful experience. Trust me on that. All right, and it genuinely looks like most of this whole assembly here is pinned and riveted in place. So I'm not sure how much of that you can actually disassemble. Yeah, it looks like the arm is pinned. That's definitely a rivet. Oh, so there's some screws there. Right, so take these screws off, and then I'll bet you can slide that whole arm right out. There's a blind bolt right here coming up through this way that's holding this pivot in place. And if you take that off, that whole pivot arm will come right out. Oh, this is the kind of thing that used to piss me the fuck off when I was an auto mechanic. You have no idea how annoying this is. Let me see if I have a wrench that can get onto that. This is the kind of thing you'd have to have a specialty tool from Dodge or Chevy to get off. How the hell did they put that in the first place? Oh, this plastic cover. Oh, all right, never mind. You take this plastic cover off, and then you can get to that screw. It's not a blind screw. All right, never mind. But my grousing about Dodge and Chevy still stands. And Ford, for that matter. And just about every brand of car I've ever worked on except for Saturn and Toyota. And then this whole piece, this whole assembly just slides right out to the back. And there is our swivel lock adjustment assembly. Of course, we've got our wires here. We've got grounds with a screw that are mounted there, and then this whole assembly should just pull right out. You know, I was reading or watching a thing about copper mining the other day, and it turns out that we have basically already consumed all of the copper-rich ore on the planet. So now when you mine for copper, you'll mine like 10 tons and be lucky to get 1 pound of copper out of it. It's some insane number like that. I don't know if that's exactly it. Yeah, these are two assemblies that are wired together. And this, yep, that's, you can't see that. That just snugs down in place there. All right, that looks like it snaps in place so we can, oh yeah, so that just comes right off. And presumably, you'll be able to fiddle this through. You know, they probably ran this wire through first and then attached the other section to it. I'm pretty sure that's how that would have gone. But yeah, here we go. Oh, and we got one more of these we got to pop off like that. And there we have it. We've taken the wiring harness out. Oh, they are in fact a very snug 1/2 inch. Because if this is what's holding that on there and we take the top bolt off, the whole assembly is going to lean that way. and it's going to make it harder to take the bottom bolt off. But if we take the bottom bolt off first, it's still putting pressure against that top bolt, but the column can't shift out of place. If you look down there, you can see these two axle points. On either side of that, there's the bolt head. So I'm pretty sure what happens is this piece gets slotted into place and then those two bolts lock it down. Yeah, and it's it just slotted against those. So it should kind of stay in place, kind of sort of stay in place. We have a spring clip. There you go. You can see on the end of this gear here, there's a snap ring right there holding it in place. And I don't have snap ring pliers. So I need to disconnect that crank lever either from the front or the back. One of the two. There's a screw right in the center of the blade elevation handle here, and that slides right off. And on the other side, we have yet again another spring clip. Like, genuinely, I haven't needed snap ring pliers for anything for so long. I don't even own a pair anymore. I don't think that's actually opening up. Oh. Did I get it? It looks like it's slotting off. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the heaviest bits of this whole thing, is this solid steel column here. Oh, you know what? I bet if you turn this far enough, it'll push that right clean out of there. But all by itself, it's not awful. It's heavy, but it's not terrible. All right, just for the hell of it, we got some screws holding this faceplate on. The rest of this looks like it's just welded together. Here we go. And that steel rod just slides right out. You know, I have to admit, this was actually easier than I was expecting it to be. That was all really straightforward disassembly type stuff. Trim piece. All right, all that remains here is the bolts that are holding the leg onto this base, and this base is riveted or welded together, punch welded, whatever that's called. Wow, there we are. All right, so there we have it. Yeah, I'm sweating like a pig here. A complete teardown of 1300 series radial arm saw. Your specific model will probably vary from this one. I know there's some that have the digital display up here, some of them that have the release lever up here instead of on the front of this. So there's going to be minor differences, but I'll bet most of the major sub-assemblies are the same. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.